Boker Tov. Today's daf is daf Samach Gimel in Nizir. From the top of the page, as we learn for a four shlema for Akiva ben Chai Rochel. Now we're going to preamble this with an important halacha, a very special halacha. Normally, if you're a tamei, if you found out that you're tamei, right? But over here, there's a special halacha that a Nazir, and we'll say the same thing as for a person who brought his korban Pesach. And the question was he tamei before? If he was tamei, then what he did wasn't valid, and he might have to bring Pesach Sheni. But a special halacha that if he already, so to speak, finished his Nazirus, he's at the end. Let's say he brought his korban and he shaved, because at the end of the Nazirus, after 30 days, normally, on the 31st day, he brings his korbanos and he shaves. Okay, and let's say he already did that. He shaved and he brought his korbanos. Make it simple. And then he found out that he was tamei before. Does he have to start all over again? Normally, if you become tamei mace, attended a funeral, or he happened upon a body, that ruins the whole thing. There's a special halacha though. If he was tamei, he found out afterwards, after he brought his korbanos and after he shaved, he found out that he was tamei before, during his period, but he was tamei what's called a tumas tahom, a tumah of the deep, meaning nobody knew there was a dead body there. Nobody knew about it. It was discovered afterwards. It wasn't exposed. A special halacha that he doesn't knock off the 30 days. Doesn't knock it off. He doesn't knock it off. He continues. And the same thing with korban Pesach, as we'll see. If he brought his korban Pesach and afterwards he found out that he was on the road and he possibly ran over a dead body, but it was an unknown dead body. It was a tumah of deep. He doesn't have to do it again. This is a special halacha motion we've seen, as we're going to discuss now.
What do you call a tomb of what?
Tumas tahom, of the deep, of the depths, meaning that nobody knew about it. Nobody knew about it. At least it's possible that nobody knew about it because it was underground. We don't know for sure, but the Gemara is going to say, we're speaking of nobody in the world knew about it. It's likely that nobody knew about it. It's possible it wasn't an exposed body. Special halacha doesn't make sense with everything else. We say a special halacha must be standard. Now we're going to see the Mishnah. Nazir shagilach, a Nazir who already shaved. Now, then that means he's finished. He shaved, he finished. Now, this Mishnah we'll see goes according to Rabbi Lezer. Rabbi Lezer held before that bringing korbanos isn't enough. You're not finished until you actually shave. The Chacham say, no, as soon as you brought one korban, you're done. So according to Rabbanan, even if you brought a korban, but at least you did something to complete the process. You didn't just finish the day. So Nazir shagilach. Then he found out afterwards, subsequently, he found out that he was tumah before him. Tumah yadu, if it was a known tumah, meaning it wasn't a tumah of the deep, a tumas tahom. It was a known tumah. Somebody said, "Oh, you didn't see that dead body? You walked by it, or you were in the river with it, or whatever." Im tumah yadu associate knocks off the whole 30 days. Knocks it off because it turns out you were tumah in the middle. No, we all know. We said, "Lord, if you're in the middle of your 30 days and you somebody dies in the room with you, you got to start all over again." We know that whole thing, right? Here it's speaking about he didn't know till after he finished shaving. He finished. Does it knock it off? Well, if it was a tumah that was known, yeah, it does knock it off. In tumas tahom. But if it was a tumah of the deep, that special halacha that I mentioned before, the deep that nobody knew about it, ain't a special halacha. It's not logical because you were tumah either way, right? There was a dead body there, but you didn't know about it. Nobody knew about it. Special halacha, doesn't knock it off. In other words, he doesn't have to start counting again. Imad shalo gilach. But let's say he found out before he finished, the 30 days was up, right? But he didn't shave yet, or he didn't bring his korbanos. Let's say he didn't do anything yet. Then benkach, whether it's a tumas tahom or tumas yadua, either way, whether the body was exposed or not, then it knocks it off. So it knocks off the whole 30 days. Okay, that's what it means. Now, Rashi says, in the fourth line from page, now that's only if he became tamei, it's a turn during the 30 days. If he became tamei after the 30 days was over, than we had before, if it only knocks off 7 days. After he finished it, if he only became tamei after he brought his korbanos, even if it was known, it's only 7 days. We had that halacha before, right? It knocks off only 7 days. That's if he became tamei afterwards. But if we're here talking about where after he finished, meaning he shaved already, brought his korbanos, and he found out that it was tamei before, especially if it was tumas tahom, doesn't knock it off. If he found out though before he shaved, before he brought his korbanos, then either way it does knock it off. Kate said, now what's an example of Tumas Tom? What's a special of Kate said? He went down to, let's say, to the mikveh, went to the mikveh in a cave, in a cavern there, but after he came out, obviously all this is only if he found out afterwards. If you knew in advance that there's the body, or you found out that he's tamei, he found out afterwards. He went to the mikveh. Afterwards, he came out of the mikveh. He says there's a dead body floating on the water. Then he's tamei because that's not tumas to home. It's an exposed body. Somebody knew about it. Somebody saw that body. The body was floating there, right? But let's say he found it embedded in the ground. It's possible that whatever, a guy, it could have been a hurricane or an earthquake or something, and the guy was just buried under the ground. Nobody ever saw him. Then Yorlacher, even if he just went down to cool off, he didn't go to the mikveh because he was tamei, then he's tar. Why? Because, meaning, we're talking about a nazir. This halacha of tumas was not by all cases in the world, everybody is tamei. No. If you're tamei normally, you're not a nazir, you're not making korban pesach. No answer. This is only a special halacha for a nazir and also pesach, as we'll see. So, like, let's say he went to cool off, and then what? And he found out that there was a dead body embedded in the ground. He's tar because he didn't know about it. In other words, again, if he finished his time, but let's say he was tamei mace already. Let's say he was already tamei mace, meaning, what does that mean? He was a nazir, came tamei mace, kept the 7 days, went down to the mikveh, and tamei, and now he came out, and they found out that there was a tumas tom, there was a dead body embedded in the ground that nobody knew about. He's still tamei. It doesn't help. Shecheskes tamei. If he was tamei, if he was a chazak and he went in tamei, the presumption is he's still tamei. Shecheskes tar sharaglaim ledavar. It's a suit. Aglaim ledavar. Rashi says komushad varm nirin kach the tar hemen chazkas. He always put a person on a presumption. If he was tamei before, he's tamei now. He's tar. If he was tar before, he's tar now, and therefore the chazak is that he's tamei. So what are we saying here? This special halacha, which is a strange halacha, right? It doesn't make sense. It's an anomaly that if he already finished his time of Naziris, he already started the process of purification, he shaved, and he brought his karbanos and shaved. Our Mishnah says he shaved. According to that, we'll see it's according to Rabbi Lezer. According to Chum, as long as he's brought one carbon, he's done. Right? And then he found out that he was tamei with a tumas to home before what in middle, then it doesn't knock off the days. Right? If he found out in the middle of the 30 days, he found out that there was a dead body that he came across, then he's tamei. Knocks off the whole time, like we said before. It's a special halacha. If he finished already, he brought his karbanos, and according to Rabbi Lezer, he shaved also. And now we found out that it was tumas to home, then it works. But only if he was tahor. Until then, the end of the Mishnah says, let's say though, he was a nazir who was tamei and went down to purify himself, then it doesn't help. Because if he's tamei before and now there was a dead body there, he never really got a purification. So it's this halacha that we say that tumas to home doesn't knock off the days after he already, let's say, brought his karbanos and shaved. That's only by a nazir who finished already, like we said, finished already, and he was tar until that point. Until that point, if he was tamei before, it doesn't help. But anyway, where do we get this from? Where do we get this tumas to home business from? Where's the source? He says tahor. He says tahor. Yeah, I was wondering about that too. Or it just doesn't knock off the days because the lashon is tahor. Because lashon is tahor. It's tahor. And we'll see by korban pesach, for sure it means that because he doesn't bring korban pesach again. He doesn't bring korban pesach sheni. That's a good question. It's a good question because you might say, it doesn't knock off the days, but he's still tamei. No, it's mashma that he's mashma tar. But not even, where do you get this from? The first thing Gemara says, it's a pasuk. In our case over here, when a person's a nazir, and all of a sudden somebody dies of him, pitom suddenly dies on him. He's in a room, the guy had a heart attack and died. We know a Kohen doesn't go to a Levaya today on purpose, right? But we're all tamei anyway. And what do you do if a person's in a hospital or Goins in a hospital? They went in, nobody was dead, or he's in a room. He's having a meeting with somebody. That's the price. The guy had a heart attack and died when he heard the price. And then, then he's you were sitting there. What can you do? You became tamei. So a love on him, but when it's clear to him, might a love. Oh, this guy's dead. I see he's dead. It's clear. It's like white. It's clear to him. So that, in other words, only if it's clear. If it wasn't clear, nobody knew about it, then it doesn't apply. Based on that pasuk, Rish Lakish says different pasuk. Pasuk says Where's the source that we talk about Pesach Sheni? Coming up to Pesach now, Pesach Sheni. It says person is tamei. Remember, is tamei at the time of breaking a Pesach Rishon. He was tamei, or he was on the road. Kiderach tamei is like kiderach. Ma derech begol, just like the road is clear, it's open, it's exposed. Avkol begol, it's got to be exposed. So the Gemara says, if that's your source, we learn, or the Tanya in Zovim. What's the Muslim? Nobody ever saw it. It's likely. Now we can't know. There's 8 billion people in the world. How do you know that nobody saw this body? Just because it's embedded in the ground, how do you know nobody saw it 10 years ago or whatever? You don't know for sure, but it's unlikely. It's possible that nobody ever saw it. It's lying in such a way it's possible nobody ever saw this guy. So, but if it's likely that somebody saw it, it was exposed, that's not tumastom. Okay. So Bishlam, the one who says Kiderach, it's got a derech shaper. Okay, fine. It's exposed. So it's exposed. It's like the road. If it's exposed, then it's not tumastom. If it's not exposed, it's not. Elamandam machvereslo. But it's the first way. What did the first time Rav Lezer said to Makra? Kiyamas face was him. It's got to be clear to him. What do you mean? It's got to be clear to him. Why is that clear? You're saying if somebody knew about it, may not be clear to you, but he says that the pasuk is, how do we know that Tumas Tahom applies this special lacha? Because it's got to be clear to you. What do you mean clear to you? Tumas Tahom we just defined as something that somebody in the world would have known that he's dead, right? Somebody probably saw it once upon a time. It's like we'll see in case of let's say you're hiking somewhere and there's a crevice in the ground or a little thing, and there's a dead body there. Now, that's not Tumas Tahom. Somebody probably saw it. It's a path. Somebody probably saw it. Probably maybe first time you saw it. So it wasn't clear to you until now, but somebody else saw it. So when you say the Mishnah said, the Bryce said, Tumas Tahom, ain't nobody out in the world. But if somebody knew about it, it's not Tumas Tahom. Here you're saying it's got to be clear to you. What do you mean clear to you? What does it clear to you? It doesn't be clear to you. If it's clear to anybody, if anybody saw it. It's clear to you. What's the difference if somebody else knew about it? It wasn't clear to you. So it doesn't make sense to say it had to be clear to you. We have a price which we're going to talk about it on the days. Let's say after you walk into the road, they found a dead body on that road. It was a small road, only enough for one car to pass, let's say, or one wagon to pass. And there was a dead body across the road. The truma, if you're going to eat truma, you're considered tamei. Right? Even though it was under the ground. The Nizir, Asiyas Pesach Torah, Rashi points out, Nizir, Pesach, they go together. If you're a Nizir, meaning you were finished just your days, and now the concern, you had already, as we saw in our Mishnah, it had to be where you finished your Nizir. So you either brought your karbanos, or like the Mishnah said, you already shaved, like Rav Lezer, that you're not finished till you shave. And then you found out afterwards that you had crossed that road, or you're on your way, or you had brought a carbon Pesach. And the question now is, if you were Tamei, you got to bring another carbon. You got to bring Pesach Sheni, and then you're Torah. When it comes to that, that's the Motzi Meis Mushkil L'Rach V'Shel Derech V'Truma Tamei B'Nazir Pesach Maisha. What's the difference? What's the difference? If the svara over here is based on a pasuk that by Nazir it's got to be clear to you, or it's got to be clear like the derech. What's the difference if you're talking about Tamei Truma or you're talking about Nazir and Siyas Pesach? We say you walked on a road, right? And the question was, are you Tamei? So for eating Truma, you're considered Tamei. If you finish your Nazir, so the question now is, do you have to start all over again, or do you have to bring a carbon Pesach Sheni? You're not Torah. What difference does it make? If it's exposed, it's exposed. If not exposed, it's not exposed. We're talking here about a case where it's not exposed, where it's a Tumas Tahom, Maisha. The answer is it's a special Lacham Moshmi Sinai. Rashi, Tosis uses Lashon Vachi, Hilchas Gemira, same thing. It's a Lacham Moshmi Sinai, Tumas Tahom. It's a strange thing. What do you mean? You walked over this road, now you found out you were Tamei, you're Tamei. You went into a place and it turns out there was a dead body, you're Tamei. But when it comes to Nazir, if you finished your Naziris already, in the sense that either according to Rabbanan, you brought your Kabbanis, according to Rav Lezer, you actually started shaving, you shaved already, and started shaving, you shaved already, so you're done. So you're done, you know what? You don't have to count all over again. If you only became Tamei afterwards, we know the halachas, you got to keep 7 days, right? But here we're talking about you were Tamei in the middle and you only found out after you finished, doesn't knock it off at all your Torah. So it's a special lachmash.
If it's possible that the body is a goy, that you wouldn't be Tamei.
Oh, that's a good point. That's a good point. So we go with the halacha. There's a shot. We brought that question before. The question is if you touched it. See, even if he's a goy, if you touched it or moved it, you're still tamei. There's a machlokas whether if you were just mahil on it, if you overshadowed it of a goy, is it tamei or not? Lahalacha, we paskin you are anyway tamei. Even that you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to go to a cemetery of goyim, even if you know for sure that they're goyim. You can't go to a cemetery and overshadow them. That's how we pass them. There's a machlokes. The Gemara many times assumes that a goy is not. We had that before in this that a goy is not mitami ba'ohel. So yeah, that's a good question. That's a good point. If you knew it was for sure a goy, first of all, you don't know for sure now, right? It's a dead body. Let's say you know for sure it was a goy, and you were malon, then you wouldn't be tamei either way. Correct. If it was only a question of being mal, you didn't touch it, and it was only a question of mal, you wouldn't be tamei. Good. That's right. That's right. If you know for sure it was a goy, but if you don't know, you're supik, so we have this problem. All right, good. Now, the Mishnah said, so he said, imach lagich. Now, this is all the special halacha by Nazir, by Pesach, is if you did the carbon Pesach already, and you finished your Naziris, but let's say you hadn't shaved yet, according to Rav Lezer, according to Chachamim, you didn't bring a carbon yet, then that's a difference. Tumas Tam doesn't apply. Whether it was an embedded, an unexposed body or an exposed body, either way, knocks off the 30 days, knocks up the whole Naziris. Mantan, who's the author of our Mishnah who says imad shalagilach shagilach, that you have to, if you shaved, you're finished. It's Rav Lezer becomes heals that shaving is ma'akev. It's indispensable. Until you shave, you're not finished with your Naziris, even if you brought your kabbanos. But the Rabbanan say even if you brought one carbon, you're done. Yes, you have to bring the other kabbanos and shave, but it's not ma'akev. You're really done. So according to Rabbanan, this halacha of Tumas Tam would apply even if you just brought one carbon, you hadn't shaven yet. Even if you hadn't shaved, you're still, and you brought one carbon, you're finished already. And if it turns out that you were exposed to an unexposed body during your Naziris, you don't have to start all over again. That's what it said. Now, boy, Rav Meir had not seen our Mishnah. So Rav Meir asked this question, Nitma b'toch Mos, let's say you became Tamei b'toch Mos in the middle of the Naziris period. And it turns out we're talking about a Tumas Tahom, where it was a body that possibly nobody had ever seen. So and you found out afterwards, man, what's the halacha? Basi yadi do you go basi yadi achamos? You found out afterwards, and therefore it's you don't knock it off the days. It's not soser, olo or not, or do you say since you were tummy in middle, you're not? So Rashi points out at the end that for Lam Racham, 2 lines from the bottom of the page, you can make boy lehochi lo shmile masis and yet not a mission. Boy lehochi isoser, ain't a soser cloud. Ulamai lemister. The question is soser. So Rav Meir Shapiro asked this question. Amarav on Amid days. Amarav Tashma. Look at our Mishnah. If you found out before you shaved, meaning before you finished your Naziris, you found out that you were exposed, that you had been exposed to a dead body, whether you touched it or whether you mile over it or whatever. Either way, whether it's Tumas Tahom or Tumas Yadua, it's so not so. The Hechim, what's the case? If you found out in middle of the time, so if you became Tamei middle of your 30 days, everybody knows you became Tamei to a Tamei Mason, you start all over again, right? Where you have to finish you have to purify yourself for 7 days, bring the special kabbanos of another Tumah, of another Tamei, the birds and the Ashim, etc., shave and start all over again. So what's the chiddush in that? Must be speaking about where he found out afterwards. So you see over here that if you found out afterwards that you were tamei in middle, right? Whatever. So if it turns out you were tamei before, and you found out that you finished your days, but you hadn't yet shaved yet, knocks it off. So you see over here this halacha. Is right. So yeah, Elav Shmamina says Rashi in the third of the narrow lines. Shmamina the Siadale la'achar he found the Comer the Soser the Basar Tumah David b'toch Mos Aslinan. In other words, he found out afterwards the Soser, but he found out afterwards, but it still knocks it off. Why? Why does it knock it off? Because he hadn't yet shaved. That's the question. Rashi and Amal said, "Boy, we're mechama b'tumas to home." When he was tamei, he became tamei middle of the 30 days by an unexposed body. And he found out afterwards before he bought his karbanos, before he shaved. Again, he finished the 30 days. and he found out that he was tummy in the middle. If he found out in the middle, there's no question he's tummy. He found out after he finished the 30 days, but he hadn't yet purified himself, meaning he hadn't brought his karbanos, he hadn't shaved, he hadn't done anything yet. According to Rabbanan, you have to bring a carbon to finish. According to Rabbi Lezer, you got to bring your karbanos and shave. So he hadn't done any of that yet. He hadn't done any of that yet, then it knocks it off even a tumas stone. So that's the question. He says, what's the halacha there? If you found out afterwards, but you hadn't yet shaved, you haven't done anything. The answer is that's our Mishnah. You hadn't purified yourself yet, meaning you hadn't shaved yet. Your karbanos make up exactly where you found the middle. Does it knock off kula soser or shiva soser? When you say it knocks it off, meaning whether it's tumah yadu or tumas tahom, and you hadn't yet shaved and brought your karbanos, you got to start all over again. Is it only 7 days or 30 days? Rabbi had a special halacha that after you finish your days, after you finish the 30 days, you became tamei, shiva sosa knocks off 7 days only. That's the question. There's different machlokes for blessing upon Rami will say, maybe that's only if you became, maybe where does Rav Lezer say that you're only tamei for 7 days? You only got to keep 7 days. If you became tamei after 7 days, the high lift name was, but here you became tamei before, so it knocks off all 30. Oh, Dilmor, do you say shiny yacha? Maybe you say since he only found out after los, therefore he only keeps 7 days. And we know, you see from the Mishnah itself, it says benkach or benkach soser v'lo kamiflagi. Says since there's benkach or benkach, whether it's tumas toma, tumas or tumas yadua, it knocks it up below kamiflagi. Here Rashi says below kamiflagi. Rashi further down in the narrow lines, below where we are near the bottom of the Gemara, but not the bottom of the page, just the bottom of the Gemara. It says below kamiflagi bein denit bekom los bein lachem los. The masis and kolem is the mashvis. But whenever he became tamei, bukim lekurbelos adamar kolachem los zayin soser. The sulo shma mina nami da afilu heichad the nitba betof los even became tamil given the idilachem los of zayin soser sulo. So according to Rabbanan, it would knock off all 30 days. He became tamei as long as he hadn't brought your karbanos or shaved yet. According to Blezer, even though Rabbi Lezer says that you're only finished with your nazirs after you actually shave, but if you became tamei after the 30 days, but before you shaved or brought your karbanos, you only keep 7 days. So that's how he learns v'lo kamiflagi. He doesn't make any difference. Rashi, according to this friend Rashi, v'lo kamiflagi doesn't make any difference between. Rashi says it means doesn't make any difference between achar melos or before melos. It doesn't make any difference. According to Blezer, it's only 7 days. Rashi then brings out another pshat, and he holds differently that it means 30 days, because he says there lo kamiflagi means that the Rav Lezer and Chachamim don't argue in this case. We know Rashi now in the wide lines, but not the widest lines. Rashi, even with the word safa in Tosfos, you see the last Tosfos starts with the word safa, which we'll come to later. But Rashi, even with that says, and we know ikul mashmina, the Haritain Benko Sosa Kamashma Masis Loshna Bain the Sosa's come below Kamiflagi Bo Rablas Rabbanim. Here he explains that the words in the Gemara that we're at now, with Zolkamiflagi is not Lokamiflagi between before and after, between middle of Los or after Los, but it's different because of Machlokes or Rablas or Rabbanim, Shma middle or Rablas or Nami, keeping the Tum up in Main Los, the Sosa that's not called. In other words, Rabbi Lezer said if you become tummy after the 30 days, you only keep 7 days. But over here he became tummy in the middle. He only found out afterwards. So do you look at the time that he found out afterwards, or do you look at the time in the middle? According to this shot, he says, we know, back in the Gemara, according to the first shot, Rashi means that the miflagi between before and after, and therefore he only told me for 7 days. Here it's the miflagi. The Rabbanan and Rabbi Lezer don't disagree. Rabbanan, just like the Rabbanan say 30 days, Rabbi Lezer would also say 30 days. That's what he means. Lokamiflagi here between Rabbi Lezer and the Rabbanan. There's no machlok between Lezer and Rabbanan. So the word lokamiflagi can be explained in 2 ways. The first way in Rashi and the second way in Rashi, or the Mufresh. Tana Rabbanan, back in the Gemara, about a third of the way down. Tana Rabbanan, Motzimes, this is the case we had before. You find a dead body, Mutal Rachba Shoder. You find him, he's laid out across the road, Rachba Shoder, meaning when you walked on this road, there's no way, if you walked on the road, there's no way you avoided passing over the body. So Kurt had a good point and said, what happens if it's a dead body of a goy? You're right. If it was better of a goy, maybe you wouldn't be tummy if you hold that the tumas goy, not all. But let's say you found it maybe it's possible that you touched it. It wasn't maybe buried deep under the ground. It's possible you touched it or moved it. Then you would be tummy even if it was a goy. All right. So amotzi meis mutal rach v'shel derech lit truma tummy. If it's a case of truma, you can't eat truma. You have to assume that you're tummy. Right. He didn't know this tummy. He has to assume that he's tummy. He can't eat truma now. He's tummy. Tummy mace. If he's a nazir who, as we said, completed his days already and brought a carbon, and according to Rav Lezer, even shaved, and he's finished, or he already brought his carbon pesach, and the question is, should he bring it a second carbon pesach? He's tar. That's the halacha l'moshe misian, as we said him out. This that we say that he's tamei, if he's for truma, is only if there was no way to pass without overshadowing the dead body. Right? Let's say it was a wide road, an 8-laner, or even a 2-laner, and he walked on there. It's possible he didn't do it. We don't know for sure. So, but if there was place to pass without becoming tamei, aflu trumatar. See, so for Nazir, no, so Pesach, even if he definitely walked over the dead body, but if he's already completed his Naziris and he brought the carbon Pesach already, we don't say that he has to start all over again. But for true, that's the halacha mishum. But for truma, we assume the worst, unless there was possible that he didn't walk over. We don't know for sure. This is a safek tamar b'shus harabim. Safek tamar b'shus harabim is tar. Right? We learn out from Sota. Only safek tamar b'shus yachid is tamei. Safek tamar b'shus harabim is tar. Aval yesh lo makom lavor. Aflu truma tar. Medmar mum shematz sham. That's only if the body was found complete. Aval meshubah. Let's say the body was broken or dismembered. Afilu ein makom lavor. If the body was dismembered, even if there's no place to pass without walking the body, maybe you walk between the parts. If the body was dismembered, it's possible. You don't know for sure. You see, if there was a body laying across the ground and the body was complete and there was no way to pass that road without walking over the body, then for tar, but if it was possible that he wasn't exposed, he didn't overshadow, the body was in parts. Maybe you walk between. Let's say the body was in a kever, a coffin, or a one closed area. Then even if it was broken or dismembered, tamei, then he's tamei and meshe kever mitzvah, because the kever combines the parts of the body. This is all mahaf brag if he's walking straight on his feet, just walking along. Avalton, let's say he's carrying something, or he's riding on an animal, riding on something. Then he's tamei the fisha mahaf brag if the guy's walking. It's possible you didn't touch it, you didn't move it, you didn't overshadow. It's possible that you walked this way and that way. It's possible. Tone or rachav, but if let's say you're carrying something or riding, it's impossible. You have no control over exactly how you're moving, and then it's so it's not even a suffix. We said the suffix is tar, but this isn't the suffix. He definitely touched it. It's impossible that he didn't touch it, or he didn't move it, or he didn't overshadow if it was under the ground. But if it was on the ground, possible it was on the ground, he just missed it. He was riding a horse and he didn't see it. But if he was walking on the ground, if he was walking over his riding horse, it's impossible he didn't touch it or move it or overshadow. This is only by tumas, meaning it was unexposed body. And Rashi here explains it very clearly, especially by tumas, that it's possible that nobody saw it. It's possible nobody saw it. It was an unexposed body. It's like we're going to give more of a detail in a second. Remember, but if it was a known tumah, they're all tamei. Again, even Nazir knows the Pesach is only by tumas tahom. That special halacha l'moshe misian is only by a body that it's possible nobody ever saw this body. But if body was laying there, was exposed to somewhere, even if it was in the water, or somebody was sitting in a gully somewhere, somebody could have. It's very likely, or it's almost impossible that nobody ever saw the body. And he's tamei, and it would knock off all the days. Even if he finishes the Naziris, and he brought his karbonos and shaved, but if it was an exposed body, as we said before, if it was an exposed body and people would have seen it, then he's tamei. We said before, and it's also imach shelo gilach, if he found it before bekach soser. But again, even the first person of the mission, even if he finished, but he turned out that he was exposed to an exposed body, then he knocks off all the days, even though he thinks he finished. He didn't finish. He got to start all over again. What's an example of tumas? Nobody ever saw it. And Rashi says over here, nobody ever saw it. Nobody ever saw this body. Now we don't know for sure that nobody ever saw it, but it's very likely. It's possible nobody ever saw it, right? Makira, somebody knew about it. It's probable that somebody knew about it. Angel to Mustam. Let's say the body was hidden or buried under straw or rocks, pebbles, whatever. Raise it to Mustam. It's possible a man dropped dead. The wind came and blew a ton of straw over the body, or rocks came and there was a high wind and covered the body. Nobody ever saw it. It's possible nobody ever saw this body. That's the Mustam. Let's say the body was beyond in the streams and the rivers, Bafelo, or it was dark when he kicked a storm, or in clefts in the rocks. Ain't it to Mustam because somebody probably saw it. Rashi in one shot, Rashi says, "V'yevsher she'adam echabaker," but somebody looked over there. Somebody saw it. You didn't see it now, but when he fell into the water, or it got dark now, but somebody saw it before. The guy was laying in a gully somewhere. It was an exposed body. Somebody said that's Ainzut Tumastam. Below Amr Tumastam, Ela Lameis Bavad. Now here's the interesting thing. We're only talking about Tumastam of Mace. What other Tumastam could there be? So Tumastam the other Tum could be because really from the Mishais in Zavim, by a Zav, if he was tummy for 2 days and he was tummy, let's say, right, or two emissions. Somebody needs to count 7 days of Tara. Let's say on the 7th day he brought his carbon Pesach, and then turns out that later in the day he had a third emission. So that knocked off the days, and he was Tameh, and he'd have to bring carbon Pesach Sheni. So what's the Tumas Tahom there that nobody saw it yet? It didn't come out. When he brought this carbon Pesach, it was still in his body. That's a different kind of Tumas Tahom. No, we don't say that. Lomer Tumas Tahom, Elo Meisbat. Special Achmash Sinai, and it only applies only for Nazir and Osa Pesach, who've already completed their mission. Says Rashi, take a look in Rashi. You see where the lines get very wide in Rashi? A couple lines before that, right before they get there. After he bought his carbon Pesach. It's only when he found about it after he already did it. This is special kula. That's the special lachul mashmi sinai. And this is we say, we talked about if the body was dismembered and all that, that's for looking for a heter for truma, because it's saftam shesarabim. But for Nazir and Osa Pesach, even if you know he walked over the dead body laid across the ground and it wasn't dismembered, and he definitely was mile over it. You know he was Jewish, let's say. You found out the dead body was the Jewish, he had a necklace with a Star of David or something, whatever. He was Jewish, Let's say he's Jewish. So really that you were Tameh, but you know what? If you're a Nazir Osa Pesach, you finish your Nazirs and you finish your carbon Pesach, if it was Tumas Tahom, the body that was very likely that nobody ever saw that body, then you are not Tameh at all. Kate said, then we said in the Mishnah, so he said it's only Tumas Tahom for Mishnah. Kate said you already went down. Now this is, and he found the dead body. The Mishnah said if you went into the mikveh and he found a dead body of their floating in the mikveh afterwards, or the cavern, wherever it was, that's not Tumas Tahom. He's Tameh. But if he found it embedded in the ground, then he's Tar. Unless he was Tameh when he went in. We're talking about, again, a Nazir and a Pesach who were Tahor. Then they performed their rites, whatever the Nazir finished shaving and bringing his carbon, etc. And the Osa Pesach brought his carbon Pesach. And then he found out that he'd been exposed to Tumas Tahom. Then he's he was Tar at the time. Then he remains Tar. But this is only in case of yard. So he said here, if the body was exposed, then he's still Tameh. That's not a Tumas Tahom. Safa ain't a metamelin sheretz. When it comes to sheretz, floating doesn't work. In other words, if there's a body floating in the mikvah, you're Tameh. The assumption is that you overshadowed it, it overshadowed you, you touched it in some form. But let's say there's a dead sheretz in there. Dead sheretz is matami for 1 day. That we don't assume that. Safa ain't a metamelin sheretz. Why? The Tanya Safa Kama, Safa bein kalim bein mekarkatar. If a sheretz, a dead sheretz, is floating, whether it's in a kli, a vessel, or in the ground, and floating in the ground and water in the ground, or water in a kli, or tar, either way, according to Rabban. Shimon bekalim tmei bekarkatar. It depends. In Kalim, it's Tam Karkaton. It's based on on Psukim. My Tamatanakama. What's the reason for Tanakama why he says Tor in either case? It says all sheretz who creep on the ground. Komakum shu sheretz, wherever he's creeping. Siv ala aretz, only on the ground. Okay, so how do you explain this? It says sheretz wherever he's creeping in the water, wherever. Then it says only on the ground. Okay, so you explain it this way. But if your body touched it, if your body touched it, that sheretz your tummy. Suffolk Maglotar. That's how the Chacham learned that b'chol sheretz ashoretz, and then he says ala aretz. So he darshans it. One is sheretz wherever he is, and then he says only on the ground. So how do you case that? Body wherever you are, that's if your body touched it. Ala aretz is only if you for sure touched it. In other words, Rashi says in the third line, okay, it says body nag batamas b'chomakim shu bein mayim ben bekarka tamei hasafik naga go in achar shenimsa saf alamayim hareza Torah ben shenimsa saf mayim shu bekalim. In other words, either way, whether it's in the kalim or on the ground or wherever the water was, the safik magdat saf lalim is Torah. So he says that chol sheretz means if you for sure touched it, you're a tamei. But if you didn't for sure touch it, then it's only then a suffix. Then you're not. It's only if it's al aretz, if it's floating in the water, and you don't. It's of mind whether it's floating. Only on the ground you're tamei. Meaning on the ground you're tamei, but not in the water. Why? Why not in the water? It says b'chol sheretz ashoretz wherever you are. The answer is if your body touched it, then b'chol sheretz ashoretz b'chol makom shu you're tamei. But if you didn't body touch it, then you're only tamei if you touched it if the suffix only on the ground, but not if it's floating. Okay, so Rav Shimon, my time. What's Rav Shimon's reason why he says if it was floating in a kli or tamei? Again, my time. Amar Uli says ksiv ach mayim. It says ach mayim. It says mayim if it's a spring. That's tahor. And then ach mayim ksiv it says yitma. It says ach mayim mikva mar mayim tahor. And then it says another place mashbet safa bakarka tahor. Only in the water. It's only in the water. Mashbet safa bakarka if it's floating in water on the ground, tar, and it says yitma. How do you explain that? Is it tar or is it tamei? So tzafa b'kelim, but the kelim you're tamei. But karka tar, it's a question of how you learn the psukim. That's machlokas Rav Shimon and Rabban, and that's by tumas sheretz. A dead sheretz, one of the 8 shrotzim who, if they die, they're metameyu. This is machlokas. According to Rabban, it's only if they bade, if it's floating, it's a suffix. If you touched it, you're tar. According to Rav Shimon, it depends if it was in the kelim or in the karka. All right, we'll pick them here tomorrow. Have a good day, everybody.